The installation of a sub-feed lug kit from the bus bars of a main panel falls under the TAP Rule 240.21b. This rule addresses tapping from supply conductors that enter a panel board or switchboard. Feeding a sub-feed lug kit from the bus bars constitutes tapping the supply conductors. The sub-fed panel requires a main circuit breaker according to 408.36a. Exception No. 1 in 408.36 pertains only to feeder tap conductors, not sub-feed conductors. There isn't a specific section in the National Electrical Code that explicitly covers sub-feed or feed-through lugs in panels. However, Article 408 provides general requirements for panels and their components. The sub-feed lug kit must be listed for use with the specific load center it is being installed in. Conductors connecting the sub-feed lug kit to the sub-panel must comply with the ampacity requirements for the intended load. The sub-panel needs to be rated for the amperage of the sub-feed conductor. Also, the sub-panel requires a main circuit breaker rated for the amperage of the sub-feed conductor. Let's delve deeper into the TAP Rule 240.21b. This section permits tapping from the main conductors within a panel board or switchboard without requiring overcurrent protection at the tap point itself, provided certain conditions are met. One key condition is that the tap conductor's ampacity must be sufficient for the load it supplies. This means the wire size chosen for the sub-feed must be adequate to carry the current demanded by the lock-off room's load center. Also, the tap conductor must be protected from overcurrent at its termination point, which in this case is the main breaker in the lock-off room sub-panel. Now, let's elaborate on 408.36 concerning panel board overcurrent protection. This section mandates that every panel board be protected by an overcurrent device with a rating not exceeding that of the panel board. The primary purpose of this requirement is to protect the panel board itself from being subjected to currents beyond its design capacity. Think of it as a safeguard for the panel board's internal components, such as the bus bars and wiring. The exception to this rule, Exception No. 1, allows for a panel board to be supplied by tap conductors without a main breaker, but this exception applies only to feeder taps, not sub-feeds. Sub-feeds originate from within a panel board, whereas feeder taps originate directly from the feeder conductors before they reach the panel board. It's crucial to understand this distinction. Now, regarding the absence of a specific National Electrical Code section dedicated solely to sub-feed lugs, it's important to recognize that the National Electrical Code operates on a principle of providing broad, overarching rules that are then supplemented by specific requirements for particular applications. Article 408, which governs panel boards, encompasses many aspects of panel board construction, installation, and protection. Within Article 408, you'll find provisions relating to busbar ampacity, conductor termination, and overcurrent protection. These provisions collectively address the installation of sub-feed lugs, even though there isn't a dedicated section explicitly labeled as such. Moving on to additional considerations, firstly, the listing of the sub-feed lug kit is crucial. The listing ensures that the lug kit has been tested and certified by a recognized testing laboratory such as Underwriters Laboratories to meet safety standards and performance requirements. Using an unlisted lug kit could compromise the safety of the installation and potentially violate the National Electrical Code. Secondly, conductor ampacity is paramount. The conductors used to connect the sub-feed lug kit to the sub-panel must be sized appropriately to handle the anticipated load. National Electrical Code Table 310.16 or other applicable ampacity tables should be consulted to determine the correct conductor size based on the conductor's insulation type, ambient temperature, and the number of current-carrying conductors in a raceway or cable. Using undersized conductors can lead to overheating, insulation damage, and even fire hazards. Thirdly, the sub-panel rating must match the sub-feed conductor ampacity. The sub-panel's ampere rating indicates the maximum amount of current that the panel board can safely handle. If the sub-feed conductor has a higher ampacity than the sub-panel's rating, the sub-panel could be overloaded, leading to damage or failure. And fourthly, the sub-panel's main circuit breaker rating should align with the sub-feed conductor's ampacity. This provides overcurrent protection for the sub-feed conductors and the sub-panel itself. The main circuit breaker should be sized to protect the conductors from overloads and short circuits, while also allowing the sub-panel to operate at its intended capacity. Let's consider the practical implications of these requirements. If the sub-feed conductors are rated for 100 amps, the sub-panel should also be rated for at least 100 amps, and the main circuit breaker in the sub-panel should not exceed 100 amps. This ensures that the entire sub-feed circuit is properly protected and that no single component is overloaded. Now let's delve into some potential scenarios and how the National Electrical Code provisions would apply. Firstly, imagine that the lock-off room's load calculation indicates a maximum demand of 40 amps. In this case, you could use 8 American wire gauge copper conductors, which have an ampacity of 40 amps at 75 degrees Celsius, as the sub-feed conductors, assuming the terminals are rated for that temperature. The sub-panel would need to be rated for at least 40 amps, and the main circuit breaker in the sub-panel would also be rated at 40 amps. Secondly, suppose the lock-off room's load calculation reveals a maximum demand of 60 amps. Then, you would need to use 6 American wire gauge copper conductors, which have an ampacity of 55 amps at 60 degrees Celsius or 65 amps at 75 degrees Celsius as the sub-feed conductors, depending on the temperature rating of the terminals. The sub-panel would need to be rated for at least 60 amps, and the main circuit breaker in the sub-panel would be rated at 60 amps. Thirdly, consider a scenario where the lock-off room has a significant electrical load, such as air conditioning, electric heating, and appliances, resulting in a maximum demand of 80 amps. In this case, you would need to use 4 American wire gauge copper conductors, which have an ampacity of 70 amps at 60 degrees Celsius or 85 amps at 75 degrees Celsius, as the sub-feed conductors, again depending on the terminal temperature rating. The sub-panel would need to be rated for at least 80 amps, and the main circuit breaker in the sub-panel would be rated at 80 amps. It's crucial to perform an accurate load calculation to determine the maximum demand of the lock-off room. This calculation should take into account all connected loads, including lighting, receptacles, appliances, and 8-track equipment. The National Electrical Code provides guidelines for calculating electrical loads in Article 220. Another crucial aspect of this installation is grounding and bonding. The sub-panel must be properly grounded and bonded to ensure electrical safety. This involves connecting the sub-panel's grounding bus to the main panel's grounding bus via a grounding electrode conductor. Additionally, all metallic components of the electrical system, such as conduit, enclosures, and equipment frames, must be bonded together to create a low-impedance path for fault current. Proper grounding and bonding minimize the risk of electric shock and ensure that overcurrent devices trip quickly in the event of a fault. Now let's discuss the importance of documentation and labeling. It's essential to document the entire sub-feed installation, including the conductor sizes, ampacities, sub-panel rating, and main circuit breaker rating. This documentation should be kept in a readily accessible location for future reference. Additionally, all electrical panels and enclosures should be properly labeled to indicate their function and the circuits they serve. Clear and accurate labeling helps to prevent confusion and ensures that maintenance and repairs can be performed safely and efficiently. Finally, it's always advisable to consult with a qualified electrical inspector or engineer to ensure that the sub-feed installation complies with all applicable National Electrical Code requirements and local codes. Electrical codes can be complex and vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, so it's essential to have expert guidance to ensure safety and compliance. The sub-feed lug kit must be installed according to the manufacturer's instructions and any applicable listing requirements. This includes ensuring that the lugs are properly torqued to the specified value and that the conductors are securely terminated. Improperly installed lugs can lead to loose connections, overheating, and even electrical fires. The conductors used for the sub-feed must be protected from physical damage. This can be achieved by running the conductors and conduit cable trays or other approved raceways. Protecting the conductors from physical damage prevents insulation breakdown and reduces the risk of short circuits or ground faults. The sub-panel should be located in a readily accessible location and should not be obstructed by furniture, equipment, or other items. This ensures that the sub-panel can be easily accessed for maintenance, repairs, and emergency situations. The sub-panel should be installed in a dry location. Installing a sub-panel in a damp or wet location can lead to corrosion, insulation breakdown, and electrical hazards. If the sub-panel must be installed in a damp location, it should be enclosed in a weatherproof enclosure. The sub-panel should be properly supported and secured to the wall or other mounting surface. This prevents the sub-panel from moving or vibrating, which can loosen connections and damage components. The sub-panel should be installed in accordance with all applicable National Electrical Code requirements and local codes. Electrical codes are constantly evolving, so it's essential to stay up to date on the latest requirements. Ignoring code requirements can lead to safety hazards, fines, and legal liabilities. When selecting a sub-panel, consider the future needs of the lock-off room. Choose a sub-panel with enough spare capacity to accommodate future electrical loads. This will avoid the need to replace the sub-panel in the future if the electrical needs of the lock-off room increase. When installing a sub-feed lug kit, pay close attention to the torque specifications for the lug connections. Use a torque wrench to ensure that the lugs are properly tightened. Over-tightening or under-tightening the lugs can lead to loose connections, overheating, and electrical fires. When connecting conductors to the sub-feed lugs, use the correct type of connectors for the conductor material and size. Using the wrong type of connectors can lead to loose connections, corrosion, and electrical hazards. When routing conductors to the sub-panel, avoid sharp bends or kinks in the conductors. Sharp bends or kinks can damage the insulation and reduce the ampacity of the conductors. When installing conduit or other raceways, use the correct fittings and supports. Improperly installed conduit or raceways can become loose, create safety hazards, and violate code requirements. Before energizing the sub-panel, thoroughly inspect all wiring and connections to ensure that they are properly installed and secure. Use a multimeter to check for voltage and continuity. Correct any wiring errors before energizing the sub-panel. After energizing the sub-panel, monitor the electrical system for any signs of overheating, unusual noises, or other problems. If you notice any problems, immediately de-energize the sub-panel and investigate the cause. Regularly inspect the sub-panel and all associated wiring and equipment for any signs of damage, corrosion, or wear. Repair or replace any damaged components promptly. Keep the sub-panel clean and free of dust, dirt, and debris. Dust, dirt, and debris can accumulate on electrical components and cause overheating and premature failure. If you are not comfortable working with electricity, hire a qualified electrician to perform the sub-feed installation. Working with electricity can be dangerous, and it's always best to err on the side of caution. The National Electrical Code is a comprehensive set of rules and regulations designed to ensure the safe installation and operation of electrical systems. By following the National Electrical Code, you can minimize the risk of electrical hazards and protect yourself and others from injury or property damage. Remember that electrical work should only be performed by qualified individuals who have the necessary knowledge, skills, and experience. Working with electricity can be dangerous, and it's important to take all necessary precautions to protect yourself from injury. Always disconnect power before working on any electrical circuits or equipment. Use properly insulated tools and wear appropriate personal protective equipment, such as gloves and safety glasses. If you are unsure about any aspect of electrical work, consult with a qualified electrician or electrical engineer. They can provide guidance and assistance to ensure that the work is performed safely and in accordance with all applicable codes and regulations. Understanding the National Electrical Code and following safe electrical practices are essential for anyone who works with electricity or who owns or operates electrical equipment. By taking the time to learn about electrical safety, you can help to prevent accidents and protect yourself and others from harm. The information provided here is intended for general guidance only and should not be considered a substitute for professional advice from a qualified electrician or electrical engineer. Always consult with a qualified professional before performing any electrical work.